Welcome to Tabletop Warden. I'm Yannick, and I'm joined by a few people here to discuss our different metas around the world. I would introduce Ben from Blitzminis first. Hi, Ben.
Hi guys, thanks for having me.
And we also have Brett Lanpher, the 2019 Gen Con winner.
What's up, guys?
And from Germany, we have Micha. He's one of the top tier players in Germany and plays the strongest free fork so far.
Hallo, Grüße.
And then at last we have Fabio Cury, the lead developer of A Song of Ice and Fire.
Hey guys, great to be here.
So to start the discussion, I would ask you, Ben, how it felt traveling around the world and playing A Song of Ice and Fire in different countries. You were in the US, you were in Thailand, Australia, Germany. So yeah, how's your experience so far?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've traveled to the US, I've traveled to Thailand, Australia, and I think the game's really interesting. A lot of people have different interpretations of some of the rules in 1.4, but I think all of that has been cleared up for 1.5. But every place you go has got a different meta, and that's really interesting. The efficiency and the way that they have pointed all the different units seems to be really balanced, because everywhere I go, there is a different perception of which is the best faction, and that's purely a testament to how balanced the game is.
Yeah. So when we look at the factions, do you have some factions who stands out to you?
Well, I think other than the free folk, every other faction likes to bring flayed men. That's what I've realized across the globe. That was in 1.4, to be fair. So 1.5, I'm not so certain, but that's what I've realized so far.
Yeah. And how's your when you look at Singapore? Is there a faction that dominates over there? For example, Lannisters with Gregor. You see a lot in your podcasts and in our battle reports. Sorry.
Actually, I've won a few tournaments here, and I think I've only done it once with Gregor. The rest of the time, it's been with Starks or other nations. Singapore does have I think we have a very developing meta. We had Night's Watch, which was on top for a while, and then once we realize how to adapt your tactics to fight them, they stopped winning tournaments. I think Lannister still places pretty highly because of the control elements. We do have a 3 NCU meta. That's pretty important to us. I don't think we have had a player win with 2 NCUs yet, so 3 NCUs is fairly important. Yeah.
You hit some topics, I guess. The other guys can also talk about, but you talked about Lannister and that they are declining with their popularity, and I know that Brett won the Gen Con 2019 with the Lannisters. So how's it going for them over there in the US?
So in 1.4, I think the Lannister control was really strong. Prior to me taking them to Gen Con, we had, I think, 3 gentlemen from our club go to Adepticon, and they all brought Lannisters, and they were all Lannister supremacy lists, and it was really, really strong. So I was pretty adamant about playing something differently. I brought the High Sparrow when I first started, and then I kind of put him on the shelf because I saw how often he was being used. And I really started to use Tyrion. And of course, in 1.4, when you brought Tyrion, you brought Varys as well. So it was kind kind of with Tyrion and Varys, it was a different level of control that they've reined in a little bit here recently, because Varys was very, very, very oppressive when he could effectively cancel those zone replacement cards, as opposed to just canceling the zone and then they play the card later. You know, he used to actually make them discard the card. And I played off of that when I took him to Gen Con. Now, I was really adamant about running 3 NCUs for a while, but the list that I took to Gen Con was pretty oppressive with just Tywin and Varys. And of course, the Reigns of Castamere had just been updated to shut off unit abilities as well as the attachment abilities. So to me, his ability to pop that at the start of any turn was something that really, really put me onto him, and it worked out pretty well. I actually only had 6 activations total, 4 combat units and 2 NCUs. And with the Flayed Men having a 2+ defensive save, I was really able to lock their best units down with Flayed Men, and then I was able to use Tyrion's tricks and Tywin's control aspect to kind of shut them down. I actually played all Starks in the championship event. All 4 matches were Starks, so I think I got a little bit lucky in that area, because Starks being controlled by Tyrion and Tywin was really, really bad for them. So it worked out pretty well. But I think the Lannisters are still pretty popular. Actually, with the change to Panic, I know there was this knee-jerk reaction to where everybody thought Cersei was unplayable. I think she's almost stronger now than she was, because while she's not making units fail by 5 or 6 and lose all those models, she's consistently making them fail by 1, and then the D3+1 is really starting to add up on units like even Umber Berserkers and Veterans of the Watch with really high morale. They're starting to sort of succumb to that panic and get grinded down that way. So Lannister supremacy is kind of coming around full circle. So we do still see a lot of Lannisters, but I think our Stark is about 50% meta, roughly, now. And that's with the emergence of Tully Cavaliers and free charges. And then Brynden Tully is becoming really popular because of Stalwart and his cards to auto-pass panic tests. And then you've essentially got an army that's all 3+ defense saves with the Sworn Shields and the Tully Cavaliers. And it's just a really tough nut to crack. So that's what we're seeing a lot of. Brynden Tully leading.
Also, there's this shift from Lannisters to Starks at the moment.
Yes, yeah, I would say so. I know at our 2 primers for Adepticon, it was at least 50% Stark. So
yeah. So yeah.
I had reached out to some of the meta leaders on the West Coast and the East Coast to make sure that when I speak, I'm kind of speaking for the United States as a whole, and I had group discussions with these guys, and everyone seems to concur that Starks are the most popular. Maybe they're not the most powerful, but they're definitely the most popular at turn.
Yeah, we see the same thing in Germany. I think in the last 3 or 4 tournaments, only a single Lannister player registered. So we had about 50% Starks, 1 Lannister player, and then filled the rest with Baratheons, Neutrals, and Free Folk, and Night's Watch, of course. So Starks are really, since 1.5, they are very, very popular.
If I could just interject here and ask a question to everybody, just wondering, one of the design decisions that was made was to give the Wolves VP, and has that seen a significant drop in the number of Wolves you guys see in Stark lists, or are they all still there?
No. Also for Germany, I can say there is no drop in Wolves in the lists. The point reduction with 1.5 even pushed them. We see here, we see Stark lists with 9 to 10 activations with 2 or 3 Wolves. So the victory point is not punishing.
Brett, the US?
I found the same thing. There was an initial knee-jerk reaction, which kind of tends to happen as soon as they release something new anyway, where some of the Stark players felt like the Wolves were just unplayable. But the data, just like Michael's saying, that the data is showing that they're still showing up. definitely Brandon Hodor with their points reduction is almost in every single list. And then with Rickon and Osha at one point, you see a lot of Shaggy Dog. The 3-point Rob attachment isn't super popular, but his commander is still pretty popular just to get the 3 dogs in there, and in an economy build with 3 NCUs, 3 wolves, and then it's usually 4 combat units, like he said. So a 10 activation Stark list. So no, we've definitely not seen a drop in dire wolves, and I don't think it's really making anybody lose a game if they lose a victory point because of the dog. So
So yeah, I think we can overall say that Starks are rising in popularity after the 1.5 update. For me as a Stark player, I can totally understand this. Also because Starks have lots of options now and have high diversity in the lists. So yeah, and I think lots of options in Starks are playable at the moment. So I guess that's also a reason why we see more Starks.
Yeah, I think they're top tier. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like every commander, every Stark commander is playable at a competitive level. You see every commander. Yeah, every commander is popular. It's very even, so it's a pretty good state for the Starks.
Yeah, we talked a bit about the Lannisters and Starks. How's your feel about the other factions? When we go over after the release dates, Nightwatch comes next. How do you feel about them?
I think Brett's playing some Night's Watch. He can share his thoughts.
Yeah.
yeah,
Please do.
yeah, I've been playing Night's Watch. I picked them up after Gen Con. I kind of wanted a change of pace from the really oppressive Lannister control. In my experience, it can kind of create a negative play experience. And so I wanted to do something that was a little bit different, so the guys in my local club could have a little bit more fun in the games without having to ask Tyrion for permission to do anything. So I was initially going to pick up Starks, but as soon as Tully Cavaliers came out, it seems like everybody picked up Starks. So I gravitated towards Night's Watch, and they were really, really, really powerful in 1.4 prior to the change to Panic, because it was so difficult to get through Veterans of the Watch. That was pretty much the staple of my list at the time, was 2 veterans, one with Jon Snow and one just a standard unit of veterans. And when you mixed in some of Aemon's healing and some of Jon Snow's healing, it was really, really, really difficult to push through those 2 veterans. And they would slowly kind of grind you down with their attack profile, basically not diminishing as they lose ranks. So they were kind of my go-to. They are still really powerful, and now with Neutral Heroes 2 coming out, I think Tycho he just makes people want to pull their hair out of their head when they finally feel like they're killing a unit, and then Jon Snow can pop "It shall not end until my death," and then all of a sudden they heal back 5, and then Aemon kind of puts them together the rest of the way. It's really deflating and frustrating to have that much healing in a list. But recently, I've started to play 2 Flayed Men with Jon Snow veterans, and with the change to Flayed Men, they are just about as strong as Lance cavalry on the charge. By that I mean Knights of Casterly Rock and the Tully Cav with their lances and the critical blow. The panic token that the Flayed Men throw down is it's really, really, really powerful. Being able to re-roll the D3 as well as with a vicious panic test. So they have definitely decreased in popularity with the change to Sworn Brothers and the change to Bowen Marsh. You don't see them anywhere near as often as you did. And obviously you're not seeing 5 Sworn Brothers on the table anymore. So I think a lot of people have shied away from them once the Bowen Marsh and the Sworn Brothers got that points increase. But I still feel like they're really, really powerful. And I know Ron on the East Coast just won PAX Unplugged with Yarwick and Flayed Men and Trackers. So they're definitely still powerful. I think the reaction was a little bit knee-jerk to the supposed nerf to them, but they can still hang. Just not as popular.
I know from you, Micha, that some of your players in your play group who are also on the top of the rankings in Germany played a lot of Night's Watch before the update. How's it going with them so far?
No, we had no top tier player, Night's Watch top tier player. We have a top tier player, yes, he played a bit Night's Watch, but
Okay, so
went to the Starks because the playstyle is more interesting for him. So he dropped his Night's Watch and did a deep dive into Starks, and I think his heart belongs to the Starks. Definitely.
so also the switch over there,
the other Night's Watch player we had, we had him. We lost him to the 1.5 update because he was someone who played Swan Brothers all the way, just crammed in as much Swan Brothers as possible. And now seeing his army list go up 5 points, and he couldn't figure out any other list. He couldn't not adapt. So he dropped out, but that's life.
Wait, he dropped out of the whole game? He just doesn't play Song of Ice and Fire anymore?
He has worse morale than a Raider unit.
but Micha is winning it back at the moment. So
no, it's not the first game he did it. So maybe he comes back in a year or something like this. But at the moment, he dropped out because of the 1.5 changes, and he disliked the way Simon did the change to the Swan Brothers and Bowen, and he's waiting for Simon to come back on their knees to beg him for forgiveness for the kind of the change worked.
I think
So
morale is a bit of an overreaction, I guess.
Very hard overreaction, and
So I guess Night's Watch are still playable. You have to adapt to the
of course,
compared to the list you could play in 1.4, and with the update on the horizon
on Friday, yes.
Yeah. I think they get a boost again, so I think they should be viable in the future. Or more viable in the future.
We did a little test game with the jaw updates and the conscript updates. Wow, yeah, they are powerful now. They are on the same level as all other factions. I think they are better than before. So the nerf to Swan Brothers was a step in the right direction. Because now you have to choose, and you can choose between all units. Everything is playable.
I think a good rule of thumb is that if you're spamming a certain unit and you can't figure out an alternative list that you would play, that unit's probably gonna get nerfed in the next update. I mean, just off the bat, you know. Like I remember somebody in the US brought 4 flayed men, or was it 4 flayed men and Roos or something like that to a tournament, and he ran over everybody or something like that. And it's the same thing. It's that's not how the game is supposed to work, you know.
But with spamming units, I guess we can go to the next faction, where I would ask you first, Micha. It's the Free Folk. Yeah, and I saw that you have much success with them at the moment. And yeah, how's it going with them?
Yeah, I like them. I think they were pretty strong out of the box, out of the starter box. I think I won my first tournament with them 3 or 4 weeks after the starter box arrived.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they play great. I was a bit disappointed by the later additions like Follower of Bones and Fen Warriors because they didn't add that much to the playstyle. The old units, Raiders, Hero Ones, and of course the Cave Dwellers, performed pretty good. So I stick to them, and yeah, it worked out for me. Yeah, and spamming is, in my opinion, the key to free folk, but spamming doesn't mean that you take one unit and play it as often as you can. Spamming for me is playing a lot of activations, play with 10 to 11 activations, and yeah, just play to the style of free folk. And free folk is an horde army, so play to it.
And for the overall feel on Free Folk in Germany, how much is it played and what we saw so far from other players?
Yeah, when I look at the tournament rankings, I see only one player constantly placing in the upper half and all others in the bottom half. So yeah, the statistics say that the Free Folk is the least successful faction in Germany.
Oh, yeah.
But I can't understand it. I think it's one of the best. For me, of course, the best faction.
Yeah. I think Ben can also talk about having success with Free Folk. I guess you played it in the last tournament in Australia. Am I right?
Yeah, I took it down to the Australian Nationals in CanCon and managed to win both days. I think the Free Folk definitely benefited from the panic update. I think they don't disappear when they get hit by a vicious weapon anymore.
Yeah.
That certainly helped. Also, just to clarify, the Australian Nationals was run at a 35-point level. So that was a little bit of an odd pointage, but it also meant that the discounts that you get on the free folk were even bigger as a percentage of your total points. So I was fielding 9 activations when people were only able to field 6 at a push 7. So that gave me a huge activation advantage, and I totally agree with Michael there. Spamming is not really just spamming raider units, but having the multiple activation really works. It is something I think maybe the design needs to look at, because if you're 2 even teams or 2 even players playing against each other, if one out activates the other, that's a significant advantage that they can get.
But there, the design team did a great job because the advantage in activations is somewhat reduced by the ineffectivity of the units and the tactics deck.
No, for sure. Yeah, the tactics deck has got significant drawbacks. Yeah.
So Free Folk is also a faction where you can win tournaments with, but it's not so popular or widespread than the other both 3 factions. Yeah. So
Do you think that's the case even in the USA, Brett?
Yeah, so it's odd because I'm in the same spot as Ben and Michael. I feel like they're very, very powerful, and people just don't really bring them. We had a dedicated free folk player in the indie meta, and he generally placed really, really well in tournaments. There were several times that he was either on top table or playing for top table, and he was consistently on top table and playing for top table. And this was all the way back to 1.4. And I felt like for a long time that they were really powerful. And then when Free Folk Heroes 1 came out, I was like, these guys are insane. And I just can't understand why people aren't playing them, because I'm personally terrified of them. So I don't see them much at tournaments. There were 0 at Gen Con in the championship event, which really, really surprised me. Chase, my club mate, did qualify 2 separate times at the qualifier tournaments. He won 2 of them with Free Folk, and then he was unable to play in the championship. But they're definitely powerful, but I think the issue is you've got a really savvy player that's just blowing people away, and then you have some kind of more casual gamers that just can't put it together, and so they finish towards the bottom. So it seems like the separation is really extreme. They're either really powerful or they feel really weak, and I think that's part of the problem of the perception of Free Folk, is that if a beginner kind of picks them up and doesn't have the patience to learn them, they're going to feel really underwhelming, because they're not easy to just pick up out of the box and start winning. You have to really understand the intricacies of the game and maneuvering and how to deploy and things of this nature. And but once you master those things, they're a really, really powerful army. So maybe a sharper learning curve is what's keeping people from playing them, but they're just definitely not popular, and it surprises me.
Wouldn't you say that's the same thing for Starks, though? They've also got a pretty steep learning curve.
I think with Starks, they're pretty forgiving, though, because many, many times I've seen Starks just very badly losing a game, and maybe they have 2 combat units left to maybe 3 or 4 from the enemy. But if they start to pull some of their better cards towards the end, I make jokes about this, but I've literally seen a Tully Cav unit with 1 model left, and that unit, because of pulling sudden charge and the North remembers, I've seen that 1 unit just bulldoze through the entire army at the very end of the game. So they've gone from being down maybe 8-3, and with that 1 unit in the deck, they just kind of start plowing through the unit and end up winning the game. Yeah, and I've physically seen it happen. So their deck can be pretty forgiving. You've just got powerful combos. It's a matter of when you draw them. I agree that to play them on an elite level, it takes some learning, but I think they're a faction that you can kind of just pick up and pull some combos. It's like, hey, this is really cool.
Yeah, I totally agree. Starks have a very powerful tactics deck that is a game changer. When you draw the right cards, it's a game changer. And in comparison to the Free Folk, the tactics deck of the Free Folk gives you some minor advantages at some points in the game, and you have to constantly play the cards and constantly play very focused to sum up all your advantages and win the game. It's hard work.
So, yeah, go on.
I think the change to Varus has also kind of given rise to the power of Starks, and even if it's just a perception kind of power, I think once people saw that sudden charge wasn't going to be blocked by Varus, because Varus was in almost every competitive list in 1.4 because of his ability really to block sudden charge, and now that he's not able to, I think a lot of Stark players feel more emboldened, because unless they're playing Lannisters who have Tyrion or Counterplot, they're going to be able to play sudden charge, and there's not really a lot that their opponent can do about it. And I know it's kind of crazy to see the deck as so one-dimensional, but I think it's made a huge difference when they can play that card kind of freely.
For my part, I can totally agree with that. Games against Varus in 1.4 feel very different than games against nearly the same list without them. I think the change to Varus shaped the meta in Germany a lot. Not a lot, but so far that we see different styles of lists. Where we can come to our next topic. We have different styles to play this game, and I think Varus benefited a control style of playing the game very much, and I think that has changed so far. Yeah. So, for example, when we look at your list, Brad, your Tyrion list, it had Varus, Tivin in it, and Tyrion as a commander. So it was a very control-heavy list. You think that such lists had a decline since 1.5?
I think that the feeling that Tyrion had to play with Varys has kind of diminished. And I hate to put it that way, but I think the strength of a Tyrion control list in 1.4 was Tyrion kind of controlling the tactics deck, and then Varys controlling the tactics board. And the reason it was so powerful for me was how exponentially better Tyrion's cards get when you control the letter. But when you would claim the letter very first, you were generally giving the combat zone to your enemy. And when they were playing something like Starks with great axes or any other, really there's never a point where you want your opponent to get a free attack. But when I played Varys, I would hold on to his tokens for that situation. So I could start my round and claim the letter, and I would pass out a weakened token to whatever unit was the strongest unit on the table. And then that way, if I failed my Varys roll to block the combat zone, at least the enemy was weakened. But generally, obviously, 66% of the time, I would block the combat zone. And Varys kind of gave me that security. And honestly, he could probably still do the same thing to an extent, because I think your opponent playing the combat zone is pretty predictable. And Varys is still good at blocking those predictable plays, like immediately going to the letter in round 1, turn 1, immediately going to the combat zone when you have units engaged, and he can still kind of block that. But I don't feel like he's as mandatory. And then with the emergence of Walder Frey, also at 5 points, I think a Tyrion list could be built around Tyrion and Walder Frey. So you could bring Tyrion, Walder Frey, and Tywin, and then Tywin able to pop at any time, and then Walder Frey able to pop when you're first player or when you control the crown. Is definitely scary that they can have 2 units that have lost all abilities, and then Tyrion can kind of start playing cunning ploy. I think he's still pretty powerful. He's just I really can't say I've run into him or seen a Tyrion list finish strong in a long time. So
Did you see get Varys played in your last tournaments?
No, nobody played Tyrion at the last tournament. Either of the last 2 qualifiers. The Lannister players were gravitated back towards the High Sparrow, and I think a lot of that has to do with the change to Panic. The High Sparrow brings essentially a stalwart without that keyword, but his influence boosts their morale, and he's the free NCU, and I think his cards are actually really powerful. So it seems like they've taken a shift back in time to the beginning of the game, where it's Knights of Castle Rock and Lannister Guard with Lannister Supremacy is what's popular again.
Yeah.
Do they bring guard captains?
They do, yeah. Guard with captain and 1 or 2 knights, maybe 3. Occasionally you'll see some flayed men. The list that I defeated at the last tournament was flayed men, 3 Knights of Castle Rock, the High Sparrow, Tyrion, NCU, and Pycelle. And he was pretty much bulldozing over everybody until he got to top table, and my veterans were able to slow him down, so he ended up not winning that game.
Okay, we see the same thing here in Germany. Tyrion is less attractive now with Varys gone. We don't see Varys anymore. So in the last tournaments since 1.5, Varus was not played. Yeah, we saw an uprise again in High Sparrow, or no, he has an all-time high. High Sparrow is always played, but Gregor Clegane as commander, went up in player choice.
Good choice.
Yeah, good choice.
Yeah, it is a good choice.
Because Tyrion dropped to maybe rank 3 or 4. Now it's High Sparrow and Gregor, mostly.
Yeah, I think for the same reasons that the Starks are so powerful now that you can't stop sudden charge, you also can't stop orders to destroy.
Yeah, and Cleganes have it even better because they can turn orders to destroy into an overrun card, and it's basically 2 free charges. So I'm generally surprised we don't have a lot more Gregor players in America. So,
and if you add a assault vet to that,
yes.
ooh, that's so much fun.
Yeah,
That's why you
powerful.
play Cave Dwellers with the Reaper to one-shot this guys.
Yes.
Don't remind me, dude. That hurts. I'm not over that yet.
They can do that.
When we go back to which styles of lists were played, the Lannister control style with Tyrion got hit, but what styles of play what styles of lists get played in your regions? So, for example, an aggressive list or a control style list, defensive list. I know, for example, Ben loves to playing Gregor with a lot of aggression. So, how it's going in Singapore?
I think I have seen that in 1.5, you don't see a lot of defensive lists. You see a lot of reward for aggression. Now that I think Brett's pointed out already that the control has taken a serious hit. So aggression is rewarded. Either you go extreme aggression or you go extreme defensive with Tycho and a whole bunch of cards to block off the opponent's aggression, and then you counter attack. I don't see control as such a big deal now, though. I think those have kind of fallen out of favor. I see a lot of people getting rewarded for aggression.
And how's going in Germany, Micha?
My opinion is that nearly every player tends to the control style. And it doesn't matter whether it's Night's Watch, Lannister, or Starks. They all play very control heavy by including Howland Reed, by including Roderick Cassier, by including Walder Frey and Tywin Lannister. So I think the core of the armies is very control heavy with aggressive elements thrown in. It's the German control deficit. The German wants to control everything. So I think if there will be a game mode without dice, the Germans will play it.
Yeah, I can totally agree with that. Yeah. And how it's going with you, Brett?
I'm actually it's generally a mix, kind of like what Ben said. It's either they go all in with offense. I'm seeing a lot of Dario Naharis, the attachment. He essentially gives precision and then the +2 attack dice. So I think a lot of guys go for the really big play with that sort of expensive combo Dario Naharis in Sworn Swords, or in Sworn Brothers, or in Mountainsmen because they innately have critical blows. So they're trying to one-shot a unit. And then the counter to that is the really heavy defensive lists, which my Night's Watch list is kind of a mix of the two, because the Flayed Men have a 3+ defense save and they're really mobile, so they're kind of defensy. And then obviously the veterans with John are extremely defensive. But they can also hit hard, the Flayed Men can. So my counter to some of the glass cannon-like really offensive units is Flayed Men with the Night's Watch deck, because I found that I can use Watcher on the wall and sort of march those Flayed Men up and put them in a really, really nice position to maybe get a flank charge, and it usually goes really badly for whatever they're charging, particularly if it's a glass cannon-like unit with Dario. With the Ranger Trackers handing out vulnerable tokens and the Flayed Men handing out a panic token. Great Axes, Sworn Brothers, Mountainsmen, they can easily go down in one shot from those Flayed Men. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, we're seeing a lot of Tully heavy lists. Chris and Ron's live stream, Mythico Studios, is a pretty popular live stream. There's a gentleman there that plays the Eddard Stark NCU, the Tycho NCU, and then the Brendan Tully list, and it's a really tough nut to crack. So
that sounds like a frustrating game.
I've seen it on stream. It heals a lot, and it's probably really frustrating. So with no 2+ defense save in the game currently, minus Warrior Sons when they're down to their last rank, and tactics cards that give a +1 to defensive save. There's no innate 2+ defensive save, I'll say that. So 3+ is the new 2+, right? So you just kind of spam units with a 3+ defensive save, and you hope that their aggression kind of bounces off of you. So they seem to sell out to one or the other.
So you guys mentioned a lot about control aspects of the game, and how do you feel? What would you say these control aspects are in your opinion? So you guys were mentioning a lot of NCU. So you think that out activating the person on the tactics board could be considered a control element, or is it something else that you view as control? Apart from these obvious abilities like Tyrion's, negating cards, and so on. Did that make sense as a question?
Yeah. So in my opinion, and I've kind of said this on the forums, I think control comes in a lot of forms. I think there's a lot of different ways to play control. In my mind, you're playing control at any point where you are basically forcing your opponent's hand. So a lot of activations can be a control list because guys want to go to the tactics board first. But if you've out-activated them so badly that you've put 2 or 3 combat units in a position where they can charge you, you're controlling their hand because they can't go to the tactics board and draw cards or make a play that they want to play, for a zone that they need. Because if they do that, they're going to get charged. And Howland Reed has that control aspect because his cards can reduce your movement and put in a combat unit at -1 to hit. So it makes you, maybe you've set up this play where you think that your unit is going to be able to charge and finish a unit off, but maybe if they need 4s to hit instead of 3s to hit, you're kind of making them second guess that play. And so that would be an element of control as well. And then obviously Walder Frey is control because he can effectively, shut down a unit and their attachments, and they have to decide if they want to hold that unit back for that turn or for that round, or if they want to go ahead and push forward with the plan that they had for them. So control can mean a lot of things, but I think generally what we're meaning is control by way of out activating them and putting them in bad positions where they've got 3 choices to make and they're all bad.
Yeah.
Also,
I think, oh,
yeah,
no,
go.
Yannick, go ahead.
Also, I think there's these different styles of control. I think the famous one is the deny control, which was played in Tyrion lists, for example. I think, for example, Starks have also kind of control when you combine the tactic cards, where you have lots of movement control, with Swift Advance, Devastating Impact, a sudden charge, where you are so mobile that you can control the battlefield by just playing your cards, and your opponent has to fear that you have these cards and that you be in places where he don't expect you. And when he expect you to do such combos, he has to play very defensive. And so you controlling his aggression by just outmaneuvering him, or have the potential to outmaneuver him.
Yeah, that's the thing I see here with the Starks. They control the enemy just by applying the pressure that they can reach them in every moment of the game. That they just the Stark player decides where to strike and when to strike. And on the other side, the Lannister players counter it with Ward of Frey just by disabling a very important unit, very important Stark unit. And if the Stark player does some maneuver shenanigans, something like Aya or something like Aya, then they also include Tywin to rescue, to save their ass in exactly that round where things go down. So I think the inclusion of Walder Frey and Tywin Lannister is the counter of the 1.5 update. 1.5 buff for Starks.
And I know, for example, in Germany, we see lists without control decreasing in popularity. For example, Night's Watch have very little control. Yeah, they have healing power and they have the aggression, but you can't control your opponent with that, because your opponent can deny you this aggression or can outmaneuver you. Or cards like Winter's Coming, who gives also a nice control aspect, keep these in check, and I think that's also a reason why Night's Watch is not that popular at the moment in Germany.
Night's Watch is very reactive.
Yeah.
And that's nothing for German players. No, I think really that's the reason Germans always want to be in control and feeling that you're out of control, that you're on the defensive, that the enemy can do everything with you and you can't react to it, is a very bad feeling for Germans. So they tend to not play this kind of armies. And as we see it, we have no really successful Night's Watch players.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Also, something we've mentioned, I think at the beginning of the podcast, it's the discussion about 3 NCUs and 2 NCUs. And I think that's also fits in the control aspects of the game, because with more NCUs you have more activations, and I think with more activations you can control more, I guess. So what's your opinion on that? Ben, I think you run sometimes 3 NCUs. Also with
Almost
your
all the time, yeah. Almost all
Yeah.
the time. I just think that there are some factions that can convert those extra spots that you might leave open into, let's say, a sudden charge or a feinting maneuver or orders to
Free-
destroy, and
free
it yeah, and it can go so bad for you if you just leave that open. So I give you an example. If I'm playing against a Stark player, or as Mike said, a free movement, I'm playing against a free folk player who can bring 3 NCUs, and one of them is Lady Val. If Lady Val is the last NCU he uses, whatever zone I leave open for him, he can use that to make a free maneuver, get into my flank, and that could be the next turn's free first activation. That could really be bad. So when I see an opponent who brings 2 NCUs and I bring 3, it's a huge advantage for me. But if you bring 3 and 3, it becomes you force me into taking the position and not give it to you. So to me, 3 NCUs is pretty important, I think.
Yeah, and also if you play 3 NCUs, you force the enemy to pretty quickly deploy their NCUs on the tactics board, and if they don't do it, if you see a Stark player only putting 1 NCU on the tactics board and then activating normal combat units, you definitely know
He's got
has
sudden charge.
Yeah. And you can react to it. If he puts 2 NCUs on the board, you can block all other 3 zones and just be safe. So it creates, it creates even more advantage to more activations, because with the claiming of the tactic zones, you disable any charging shenanigans or combat later in the round. So it's only combat unit against combat unit with no tactic board interference.
You guys mentioned a lot about 3 NCUs and how the meta is shifting that way in your local communities. And my question was, if everyone is picking 3 NCUs, that means that you can always expect to have one of them out of the tactic zone at least half of the game. So wouldn't it be a smart choice to go with 2 NCUs, kind of like against the flow, and that way you get those extra spare points? Wouldn't they be more beneficial than just the threat of having one more tactic zone activation?
Brett, do you want to go first, or?
Yeah, I can go first, if that's okay with everybody.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, Fabio, I pretty much made a conscious decision going into Gen Con when there was a rise of 3 NCUs. I made that conscious choice to remove Pycelle from my list because I was always running 3 NCUs. And in removing Pycelle, I was able to take a 7-point unit that used to be Mountainsmen with Assault Veteran, and I essentially turned those into Flayed Men. So that really paid off for me. Exactly what you're saying. Having the 3 NCUs with 1 being left off and having a kind of a weaker combat unit, I found more benefit in bringing a more elite combat unit instead of the 3rd NCU. And I've pretty much stuck to 3 NCUs since then. When I first started with Night's Watch, I ran Yarwick with Amon and Bowen Marsh, and I did 3 NCUs there. But my general rule when I'm playing, anytime I bring 3 NCUs, is I want 1 NCU that still has an ability off the table. And what I mean by that is something like Tywin, Tycho, Lord Varys. These guys can all use their abilities without being on the table. So I don't have to activate them and get them on the board. I still am able to get their NCU ability. But for the most part, I just bring 2. And then I kind of beef up my combat troops with those extra points. And it seems to work out well for me. So I have that disadvantage in some ways, but I feel like I'm able to make up for that because instead of a 2nd unit of trackers, I have a 2nd unit of Flayed Men on the table.
Interestingly, the only times I played with 2 NCU was the first demo games where we only played the starter box, the 2-player starter box, and when only the starter box for the Free Folk was allowed because my commander was Mance Raider, so I had only 2 NCU available. Even at our first tournament with 30 points in Germany, I ran 3 NCU and won it, and since then I think there was no tournament won by a player with 2 NCU. Competitive tournament. I think most of the time the upper 50% of the tournament players play 3 NCU. I think Yannick, you were one of the last ones switching over to 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I noticed, especially with Free Folk, when only 2 NCU were available and all the other guys played free, I felt it was an extreme uphill battle. It was the thing we discussed before, to don't be able to grab free spots, so that you're forced to leave one spot open is just a really bad feeling. So yeah, it can be used from the opponent, and that feels bad.
Also, you don't have the pressure to force your opponent that he needs to claim the third zone or needs to claim the tactic zones because you have 3 NCUs.
Yeah.
If you don't, you can't force your opponent, so he has a free turn where he can stall the game later in the round, so he can see what you do with your combat units. And I think for me personally, it's a very big advantage to know how my opponent wants to play this round, and so I can read him better if I have the pressure but he don't.
Just curious, Brett. In the primers that have happened for Adepticon, how many people have won in the top table with 2 NCUs? Are there a lot of them?
So I ended up winning both primers, and I only had 2 NCUs. Aside from me, John Hurley was up towards the top, and he has one list that has 3 NCUs. Craig, who finished second place at the last one, had one list that had 3 NCUs and one list that had 2. And the Lannister player that was up towards the top as well, he had 3 NCUs. So it's definitely something that can win. I think for the most part, I'm the exception. I think most people have at least one list that has 3, and I have no lists that have 3. But outside of me, I think the 3 NCU seems to be pretty dominant.
Yeah, from 3 NCUs, we can go back to the table. I think that you mentioned that you play lots of cavalry, but or lots of players on your gaming group or in your area play cavalry in nearly every list. Brett,
Yeah. The cavalry is definitely really popular. With the emergence of Tully Cavaliers, they're such a big threat. I think they've kind of forced a lot of people's hands to bring a cavalry unit. There are some exceptions. Some Stark players will run the 3 dire wolves with infantry, and they'll kind of use those dire wolves to intercept enemy heavy cavalry. But for the most part, there's at least one cavalry unit, and that's I think that's been a result of Tully Cavaliers being able to kind of take over the game with devastating impact, giving them such a deep threat striking range. And then with dire wolves being kind of get behind your lines, I think they bring the cavalry as a counter to that. But most lists that are finishing towards the top have at least one cavalry unit, sometimes 2 or 3, and it's generally Lannisters running Knights of Casterly Rock, Starks running Tully Cavaliers, and then in my Night's Watch list I have Flayed Men and I have Trackers. And in an absolute emergency, I can use those Trackers kind of alpha charge an enemy cavalry unit and pin them down if I have to.
Yeah.
So I think it's been a reaction to the presence of Tully Cavaliers. They're very, very, very popular in America. And if you don't have an answer to kind of slow those guys down, it can end up being a really long game because they have cards that amplify their charge. So generally when they hit, it hurts really, really bad.
So how is it going on your side, Ben?
Cavalry's always been popular. The guy who won this Singapore open. I think had 3 cavalry units. He had 2 Talicav and 1 Flateman. That was not funny. Whelp
Oof.
Commander with swan swords in the back. And yeah, even if you tied one up, the other would flank charge you and butcher you. So that was pretty rough. That was pretty rough. And if you manage to tie up 2 of them, he could always just pull the swift retreat card. So yeah, not fun.
Tactical regroup. It's like tailor built for cavalry.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible. So yeah, lots of cavalry here as well, and flayed men is always popular. So
I think the new Clash of Kings kind of lends itself to cavalry as well.
Mhm.
The fact that you can redeploy a cavalry unit in your deployment zone and they're immediately able to charge right back into the fray is pretty nasty. And I found that it was across the board at the last primer we played Clash of Kings, and there were 0 wins by anybody that didn't bring cavalry. So every winner in round 1 had cavalry in their list, and it was generally 2 units or more.
really, Free Folk didn't win that. Didn't Clash
We,
of
we
Kings?
didn't have
Yeah, I
we
was
didn't have
thinking the
any
same
free
thing.
folk. There were no free folk,
Oh,
so I can't speak for that.
I see. The true North was not represented.
It wasn't. Our guys don't love the free folk. I don't understand it. I'm afraid of them in that scenario.
But Free Folk has the Hammer. Free Folk has the Hammer cavalry, right?
Yeah.
They're a good counter to cavalry because if they are bringing like their Tully Cav or their Flademen back, they can maybe one-shot a unit of raiders, but it doesn't matter in real life. It doesn't matter. They die and then they come back and they never give up a point. So I feel like free folk would shine in that scenario, but our guys just don't run them.
Yeah, we had a similar development. Cavalry was very popular, especially by the top Lannister player, I would say. He ran his Tyrion list always with at least 2 cavalry units, but reduced it to 1 because it's enough for him. And when he reduced it, the other guys came up, including more cavalry. And I think it was a point where the not so skilled players who leaned very heavily on cavalry got their asses handed over by the more by the more control style lists, and they got damned. So they went a step back and included most of the time only 1 cavalry unit into their armies, and that was enough for them because if you field more cavalry, you normally or typically have less activations, and you want more activations against this control heavy lists, against this Tyrion lists. Yeah, so I think at the moment we are most of the time stuck with 1 unit of cavalry.
Yeah. And I think at the last tournament I attended, there were some Stark players run 2 cavalry units, but all of these lists have Rob Stark as a commander, who has great benefits for cavalry units. So I guess there the points you get more value of your points you paid for the cavalry unit. So I think that's one of the reasons.
Yeah, I think
why more than 1 cavalry is played with Rob.
Rob and horses are tied together, kind of. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he definitely makes them exponentially strong with essentially 2 stop them from being bogged down in hit and run and tactical regroup. Essentially, running lance cavalry, want to always be charging. It lends itself really well to the not surprised at all that was pretty popular.
Yeah. But I think the rise of Rob is caused by the fall of Tyrion.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I really like that little guy. I might have to put him back on the table again. He probably won't be as scary as he was.
Okay. Do you want to talk about the tournament scene?
So, tournament scene generally, I think Ben has the best insight to it. You played on different countries, on different tournaments. So,
Sure. So last year when I went to the Thailand Simon Expo, that's the Simon Expo Asia, they had enough Kickstarter terrain for us to use, and they told us that we can't use the 2D terrain. So that was kind of interesting. It helped shake things up for us as players. Because the footprints of the 3D terrain are like double the size. The werewood tree is like, a quarter of the table in length. So that really shook things up for us. When I went down to CanCon in Australia, they also used the 3D terrain, and they upped it by putting only 4 pieces of terrain on each table, and you are forced to use those 4 pieces of terrain. So that also made things very interesting. I know here in Singapore we use the organized play kit, the organized play rules or whatever that the design team has come up for, and that means that we all get to bring our own 4 pieces of terrain, and it leads a lot of people to believe that Westeros is corpse piles and werewood trees, and a few palisades. So that's something.
Not many stakes then on the let's call it Asian meta for terrain placing.
There is some, but they don't see the board very often. Mostly it's palisades to just block them off completely rather than do the wounds.
Gotcha.
so
Yeah.
how's going on your end, Brett? How's your tournaments?
Almost every tournament in America, everyone that I've been to in the Midwest, they've adopted the random terrain section of the rulebook, and I think a lot of that was because of what Ben has mentioned. When players were able to pick their terrain, you would generally see wood trees, piles, the occasional palisade, very little stakes, very little low walls, almost no hedges, bogs, forests. Those things didn't really ever get chosen. So, Adepticon for sure uses random, and they have their own table, which I've actually gone into my documents and pulled the table out, and I'll read it out for everybody that's listening. You will roll a D3 plus 2 in the 40-point games, and then the players will alternate rolling. A roll of 2 is a weirwood tree, a 3 is a palisade, a 4 is a forest, 5 to 6 is a hedge, 7 is player's choice, 8 to 9 is the low wall, 10 is the stake, 11 is the bog, and 12 is the corpse pile. So the 2 least common rolls are the weirwood tree and the corpse pile. And I think it's because of their popularity when players choose. And I think they're away from those pieces of terrain on the table. So I would suggest if you're practicing for Adepticon that you kind of get familiar with the other terrain pieces, because you're bound to see some things that you used to play. And I like it. It adds variety to the table, and it kind of layers into your strategy as well, because you're seeing things that people wouldn't choose, and they're actually pretty tactical pieces of terrain. The low wall, you can really use that to your advantage because it disrupts charge bonuses, and if they touch it in any way when they charge over it, you get +1 to your defensive saves. So the random terrain, I think, adds a lot to the game. That's my personal opinion. I really.
Yeah,
Okay, that's very interesting.
I love it.
Yeah.
Both times I've played with random terrain, I think it's great. It really forces the opponents to think,
Yeah,
rather than
it
just have their own plan, right? I mean,
Yeah, and adding the the hindering with the bogs and things like that. I think not just for the inspiring. I think weirwood trees are chosen because they don't movement way, and it kind of gives them a lane to charge. It doesn't offer any cover. It doesn't slow you down in any way. So you just charge right over the weirwood tree and where you want to be. So
I guess you can guess what is played, what terrain mode is played in Germany.
control. Everyone gets a choose.
Yeah, that's right. I think we exclusively play the control mode, so that every player can put the terrain he wants on the table. Personally, I like this idea because you can tailor the terrain to your list. For example, the Night's Watch Stonefall lists got normally overrun by very aggressive armies. And to get a chance, they played a lot of stakes just to add up damage to the opponents and to catch them on the stakes and to kill themselves. So the choice of terrain made this kind of army playable. With random terrain, they were not really playable. On the other hand, we had one tournament, I think in Dresden, where we tested random terrain. And it ended that I had to deploy, I think, a palisade. As a free folk player, I had to deploy a palisade where my opponent had 2 terrain pieces of his choice to deploy. And I think the randomness can create a negative play experience. So I'm happy with the selection, player selection of terrain.
Also, from the terrain to the tournaments in general, what game modes are played in the tournaments? I think that's also a huge factor besides the terrain placement. Ben, what do you experience so far?
For what? Sorry, the random.
In the game modes of who are played on the tournaments.
Oh, well, I can tell you Winds of Winter and Dark Wings, Dark Words definitely amongst the most hated by the players. I have had the pleasure of playing Clash of Kings against Free Folk, and I've tried playing them just casually. And if a Free Folk player comes with a Clash of Kings list, it's really, really hard to win. Because if you control, let's say for a second you control all three objectives, with a commander on one, that's 4 VP. You need 3 turns of that to win against a free folk player, and that's not going to happen uncontested. So Clash of Kings is is situational. But I would say Dark Wings, Dark Words, it certainly has a lot of swinginess to it. I've seen armies run away when the revealed mission is the successfully charge. I've seen them run away at full tilt from a free folk player because they know that, if I charge in, the free folk player is going to get 3 or 4 charges off, and that'll be 4 VP. So, in terms of missions, it's normally Game of Thrones, Feast of Crows, Dance of Dragons. And then if there's a 4th mission, it's maybe Fire and Blood or Clash. How's it for you guys, Brett?
We try to avoid the Dark Wings, Dark Words, and the Winds of Winter as well. It's generally what I would call the big five: Game of Thrones, Clash of Kings, Feast for Crows, Fire and Blood, and Dance with Dragons. What I found in every tournament plays Dance with Dragons. Teams in America, they tend to favor Fire. That scenario can end really quickly, and it's generally really bloody. I think.
Normally ends with tabling, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, it can. Yeah, it depends how you play it. I kind of try to play a more offensive game and pile victory points with John, and I generally victory game. A lot of people just if they know that Fire and Blood is present, and they'll bring 4 incredibly powerful combat units to take advantage of the +2 attack dice. And when that happens, they generally just crash into each other. It's a tabling, yeah. The +2 attack dice. There's
really
not
end the
really,
game.
yeah. There's not really any. There's not any middle ground with that. There's not any unit that you want to give +2 attack dice to. So.
And you can't give it to the dog anymore in 1.5, so.
Correct.
So I think for Germany we are relatively set on which game modes we play, aren't we?
Yeah, we play all game modes except of Dark Wings and Wind of Winter, right?
Yeah.
And
Well, you don't play Storm of Swords, do you?
Yeah, of course. It's unplayable in competitive gameplay. No, and I think Clash of Kings is also disliked because the experience with Free Folk I created sometimes. Yeah, but Fire and Blood is very strong in the scene. I think Fire and Blood is an all-time high. Yeah. Yeah, Fire and Blood is always played. Maybe because the Stark players like it.
There was something that I want to bring up for Adepticon, and Brett, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I understand that Martin is doing Game of Thrones, Feast of Crows, Dance of Dragons, and then the 4th mission is only going to be known on the day itself.
That is my understanding, yes, because I think the general consensus is that the players can kind of tailor a list to Fire and Blood or Clash of Kings, respectively. So if they know that Clash of Kings is going to be there, they will probably run a heavy cavalry list to kind of exploit that. And if they know that Fire and Blood is there, you would see the Stark double Tully Cab, double Great Axe kind of build to exploit the +2 attack dice. So we've discussed it, and he sees advantages to both. And I'm pretty sure the last I had spoken with him, he decided to kind of leave that one up in the air, and not even I would know what it was. So,
and I want to bring that up because I think that was a very interesting way to do it. Yeah. Sorry, Ilya, you were going to say something. Oh, Michael, sorry.
No, I think that's a pretty good idea to leave the missions open.
Yeah, I like the idea. I believe you should just kind of build your 2 lists to deal with things that you'll see from other. Yeah, it's an all-comers list, and I'm not crazy about being able to tailor to that specific scenario. So I build my lists with all 5 missions in mind, and I'm not the type to change what I'm bringing just because of one mission. So I think it's pretty fair, and with everybody coming in knowing that it's going to be, he might even just make it random. From what I know, he might just roll 1 to 3, it's Fire and Blood, 4 to 6, it's Clash of Kings, and I really like that.
Yeah.
How many games are played typically at a tournament?
We try to play 5 if there's 16 or more players. I think at Adepticon, the championship event is set for 4, but there is the possibility that it will go to 5 rounds. We've got 64 players, so at the end of 4 rounds, I think you would have 8 undefeated players, hypothetically.
Four.
Okay, so I think we might go to 5 rounds,
That'll
but
be
I'm not
interesting.
sure. I can't speak for Martin on that one.
That's going to be really taxing, though. 4 games in a single day. 5 games in a single day.
5 games.
Five,
Okay.
five games would be really rough. It was really hard to get through 4 at Gen Con. When they're at the level of competition that those tournaments seem to bring really strong players, and it legitimately does wear on your brain and makes you physically tired at the end of those
Yeah.
games. So I know I
Um,
sweat. Do you guys sweat a little bit? Get a little sweaty palms, little nervous.
I think I don't know whether you guys wear a fitness tracker or something like this. If you no, it's really interesting. For example, when I play at the ETC, so the World Championship or European Championship, call it what you like, I typically burn about 4,000 to 5,000 calories a day.
Oh wow!
And I normally do about 2,000. So and I also drink about 5 to 6 liters of water a day on a gaming day. So if you are in a tournament setting and play a tournament and really are in the game, it's like doing sports. So of course it's very tiresome or tiring. Yeah, you burn out, and if you do multiple games on a day, the number of mistakes increase during the day.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So
I agree.
Being in physical or in good physical shape definitely helps you to win tournaments. Yeah.
Yes.
Yannick, how
Better
many?
get that app workout, right?
Yeah. Yannick, how many games are played in Germany on the tournaments?
For us, it's on usually 4 games, and yeah, I think we are playing 90 minutes, so 1.5 hour, usually as a time frame, but most of the time it's handled very loose. So if you are going over the time a bit, it's totally fine, and
Yeah, it's tolerated.
yeah. So
In Singapore, we just follow the same thing as what Brett said. Basically, as many games as it takes to just make a single person who win all their games.
yeah.
Okay. No, we can't do it because 5 games took or take too long, and we have a lot of players driving to the tournament and in the morning and going home in the evening. And if we would do something like 5 games, I think a lot of players wouldn't come. The more casual players wouldn't come to the tournament.
Yeah. Also, you hit a topic I just want to talk a bit. In Germany, you just mentioned it that the players are coming from all over the country. I think that's a bit different, especially in the US. How is your player composition on your tournaments, Brett?
So when we run a local event like the that we've been doing, we get some guys kind of from the Midwest area, and what I mean is they drive maybe 5 hours playing those events.
Yeah.
But when we have those big cons like Gen Con and Adepticon, generally the people traveling from out of state are staying on location. They're staying at a hotel in India, or they're staying. So there doesn't be as much of a time there for them.
Mhm.
But for the most part, the bigger events are held as like a convention. So people that are traveling, planning to pay. I guess that's what's different. And then obviously you get some traffic from people that are 2, 3, 4 hours away, and they generally try to end at 6 o'clock to give people time to get home.
So do you have people all over the US come to the cons? So they fly in?
Yes. Gen Con, we had people all over the US, and there were some from out of the country as well. I know Adepticon will have people from out of country and definitely States.
How many tournaments are played in your country per year?
If you're talking the bigger tournaments, I know there's Gen Con, Adepticon, at least 1 or 2 PAX Unplugged tournaments. And then I think there's at 2, 3, maybe 4 CMON Expos. Maybe Fabio can help me with that.
Fabio, I think you're muted.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Can you repeat that again, Brett?
Yeah, my question was, as far as like the PAX Unplugged and the CMON Expos, I'm not entirely sure how many of those there are. I know that they're kind of spread across the country.
Oh, yeah. To be honest, I'm not sure exactly on how many there are and what their dates are, but I usually get a memo. So
Well, there's besides Adepticon and Gen Con, there's definitely several, I would say, bigger tournaments. The CMON Expos, there was just recently the Las Vegas Open at the end of January. So I'm going to say there's safely 8, 9, maybe 10 bigger tournaments per year in America.
What means bigger? 16 plus?
No, I don't think there's 60 plus. I think they just garner a little bit more attention than a local tournament. So the Las Vegas Open was a little bit bigger than a local event, but I think it had 16 players, but it just it had a little bit more attention drawn to it by maybe perhaps its advertisement or the fact that it's maybe an official tournament makes them a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
And then the CMON Expos and PAX Unplugged were considered bigger tournaments because they were advertised as non-sponsored tournaments. But as far as local, the number of local events to pull in, 8 to 16 players per time. There's so many of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
For you, Ben, I heard that you have qualifier tournaments to one bigger tournament at the end of all qualifiers.
That's right. Yeah, we have, and I think Brett has that too for Masters or something like that. But we have smaller satellite tournaments. We have a tournament every month, at least 1 or 2, that bring about 16 players, and then we have qualifiers which happen maybe 3 or 4 times a year, and then those will go to the Singapore Invitationals, which are held at the Singapore Comic Con. And then what is that sound? Okay, sorry. And then after that they will go to the the invitationals, and then normally CMON Asia is doing a giveaway for like a subsidy. If you win a national tournament, you get a bit of a subsidy to travel to the CMON Expo Asia, which is normally held in Thailand.
So there's a real network behind the tournament scene over in Singapore, in your region.
Yeah, there has to be. The Indonesians come over and play in our tournaments. Sometimes we go over and play in theirs. Southeast Asia is a really small place. Singapore is a really small place. I mean, we're probably smaller than Frankfurt. The whole country of Singapore could fit in Frankfurt. So we're tiny, and if you go on like a budget airline, it costs maybe $120 to fly over to the Indonesia. So
Oh
a
wow.
lot of people don't mind doing that.
So yeah, I think that's a bit different than Germany, where we have everywhere small tournaments everywhere and some bigger tournaments, but they're not organized or
They are not linked.
linked together. Yeah.
Yeah. So the size of the tournaments typically scale to the available room. So we have tournaments with a maximum 10 or 12 players capacity. And we also have tournaments with 24 or even 70 people capacity. So normally, it's the available room that dictates the number of players. We typically have full tournaments in the western part of Germany and very low number of players in the eastern part of Germany. Yeah, so but I think the tournaments in the western part are visited by all players of Germany. So because it's only about 400 to 600 kilometers all across Germany, it's very comfortable to do a daily ride in there to tournament. Yeah, and that's where I think most of the players of whole Germany meet. So it's similar to the community thing that Ben said. We are all a big gaming group. Okay, we are divided into small gaming groups, but we regularly meet at the bigger tournaments and travel over whole Germany to meet each other.
Are these gaming groups as competitive as your football clubs?
What's football?
Soccer.
What's soccer? You mean that stupid game where 22 people run? Okay, no. No, the competitive level depends greatly on the gaming group. So, for example, my gaming group here in Eastern Germany, we play competitive armies and competitive mode all the time because we love it. We don't play, for example, a Storm of Swords, or we don't play some generic or themed armies. We just tailor the armies to our needs, improve them from game to game, and play as hard as possible in a sense of list creation. But of course, the games itself are very friendly and more like Beyond Pretzel. So Beyond Pretzel on the friendship level, but decisions are very hard and very hard thinking. And there are also some gaming groups that play only in the Beyond Pretzel style. So I clicked a random list and I field a random list, and I feel not in the mood to think about my moves and just roll dice. So we have everything in between.
Yeah. So to sum up this podcast, I think we can everybody can talk a bit about what is really special about their community and what stands out. Brett, do you want to go first?
Sure. In my community, we've essentially got a centralized location. It's Family Time Games, and it's run by Shane. Shane has been a big advocate for the game pretty much since it was released, and he has a really, really big store, and he's an incredibly friendly person. So we do a lot of demos constantly, and he houses the big events in his store, and has a really low overhead. It's usually $5 or $10 to enter, and we do a lot of beginner-friendly events with giveaways for beginners. So I think kind of what makes our community a little bit special, I guess, is how receptive we are to new players. Always trying to bring new players in the game. And another thing we try to do in between every competitive tournament that's like a primer, we run a team tournament. And in those team tournaments, we often do random pairing. So you won't necessarily know who your partner is. And the reason for that is those team games tend to elevate some of the beginning players because they're playing with a veteran. And so they're able to get inside that veteran's head, in that team game with asking questions on what decisions are being made and why we're doing this. We openly talk about what options there are. And I think it's cool that some of the more hardcore gamers can put that off to the side and not focus so much on winning and just openly talk about the tactics to try to develop the community. So we're very community focused on growing and helping players. We don't table the new guys, and we don't bring to play new guys. We try to encourage people to get into the game, and we help them grow. Yeah, I do a lot of personal chatting with guys and personal messages to give them some ideas, kind of try to suggest this or that. So I think it's mostly just everybody we're just trying to grow it and build a community. So
that sounds very nice. So I think you should check Brett's community out, and yeah. So I think when you're in the area, go to Brett and play a few games with him. Yeah.
Well, when I'm in Brett's area, I will play with him.
Yes, you will. Yes. So we're pretty close to Gen Con. So anybody that comes down for Gen Con and I know Gen Con lasts several days in the tournament, and absolutely on those off days, feel free to inbox me and we will get you set up at the store to play with some of our local guys.
So how's it for you, Ben?
We've got a few friendly local game stores, FLGSs here in Singapore, and most of them run events. We have casual events which are called game days, where there are no scores taken, and everyone goes into lucky draws and stuff like that. And I mean, at those kind of events, I've taught people how to beat me. Gone through with them, like, no, maybe you should consider doing this, and I'll explain why, things like that. I think the game really excels so much because it's very easy to pick up, but there is a very, very high skill cap. So a lot of people get into the game, and then you need to kind of guide them along as to the thought processes and stuff like that. So we don't have a team event, but I like the idea that Brett brought up. I might steal that locally and try and get some teams going with some vet players and some newer players. But yeah, I think the community is pretty good. We normally play this place called Gamosaurus Rex in Singapore. They run the best events here locally, so that's a nice place to go if you're ever in Singapore. Normally, you guys will only be here in transit.
So just bring your minis when you're on transit.
Don't even bring your minis, man. Just tell us what you want to play, and I'm sure someone locally has it. I mean, you guys have seen the channel. You see how many people I do play. They're all pretty friendly people.
Absolutely.
I think we have a plant in China. I could travel over Singapore. Yeah.
Well, don't travel to China now, but yeah.
Yeah.
Wait a couple of months, man.
Our facility is closed at the moment. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Hey, stop by and let me know when, and I'll set you up, man. We'll go out for dinner and we'll make a night of it.
I try to organize it. Okay. Yeah, German tournaments. I think what's special about German tournaments is that we don't get support by game stores. Maybe some guy is lucky and the game store, or we can do a tournament in a game store, but normally we don't get any prize support or anything else. We don't get supported by Asmodee or Simon. So typically the organizers, the tournament organizers, buy something like game night kits for ridiculous amounts of money. I think about $100 per game night kit from the US or something like this. And yeah, try to do it unsupported. That's a reason for why the community is bound very tight together. Yeah, and everybody honors what the organizers do because they often buy the stuff, the prizes from their own money. Yeah, and what's a bit of special in Europe is that you think Europe is a whole like a big country, but in reality we don't have a clue what our neighbors do. So, for example, we saw in our tournament organization system that France has run about 25 or 30 tournaments in the last 12 months. And yeah, put up a 100-player tournament in Paris. So we don't know what they play. We don't know what their meta looks like. We don't know anything about them. But it seems that they have a very active community, a lot of active tournament players. I think about 200 listed tournament players in France.
Wow.
We have the Netherlands, we have Belgium. So we have a lot of Song of Ice and Fire players. We have a big community, but the communities in different countries don't know each other. So we do a first try. I think about 10 Germans go to the Paris tournament.
Yep.
And yeah, we are eager to see what a Song of Ice and Fire is there in France, how it is played, what the lists look like, whether they play 2 NCU or 3, I don't know.
On that point, when I was in Frankfurt and I was speaking and I played with Yannick and Ilya, they did bring this up, and I've already spoken to the co-CEO at Simon, and he has assured me that he will tell me and I will tell you guys where the proper channel to go to get Simon's support is.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have his word on that he'll get back to me, and when he does, I'll let you know.
Nice.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
So
Something special? More special? Yannick?
no, I think you captured most of it. I think what I want to point out more is that we are more a big family that plays Song of Ice and Fire together. So lots of players know each other. You see them regularly in tournaments, and it's a big community, a big friendly community, and
We do couch surfing.
stuff like this. And we are very helpful to each other, and we just want to have fun playing at tournaments. And of course we want to win, but first we want to have fun. And I
the
think
tournament
that's
scene
the
is
main part.
the tournament scene is very friendly. So it's like, I don't know whether it's the same at your tournament, guys, but it's like a gentleman's agreement. So if somebody rolls attack dice, or a few roll attack dice and say, okay, I have 10 hits, and your opponent starts rolling defensive dice. Normally, we remind him that there's a weaken token, or that he may play a card if he have some on his hand or something like this, or if he missed the trigger for his card and said, damn, I missed it, we typically allow him to play it afterwards. So we had we have a very friendly we have very friendly tournaments and try to help each other and to fight and play together and not against each other.
Yeah.
Maybe that's typical for the whole Song of Ice and Fire community, other than other games from companies with 2 letters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll largely agree. I think for whatever reason, this game does tend to, now while it's very competitive, it does tend to bring out the friendly people. I've had zero bad experience, and just like Micah said, I remind opponents about weekend tokens. I spend it if they forget. If they charge me with their flayed men and don't place a panic token, I place it myself. And it just seems to be the general consensus with players that we remind each other. Same with the window. If they say, "Oh, it's not 3 turns later," I'm like, "Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead and play it." It seems to be the way that it is from my experience as well. It's encouraging that the community seems to be so friendly, and it seems to be that's an thing.
So at the end, I just want to ask Fabio if he had any questions to us as a developer. If something interests you at the end of the podcast.
Thank you very much. I think I had my fair share of questions during the podcast itself. So I'd say I'm fine. It was very interesting to hear most of these comments. And right now, I guess we have a playtest meta, but unfortunately, it's not something I can disclose at the moment.
Well, don't feel obligated. We won't tell anybody.
Nobody's
Also,
listening.
don't record this.
Ignore the recording bot. It's fine.
But I have a question about the playtesting meta. If you can answer this, do you is there a typical set of games, or do you play more Beyond Pretzel, or do you tend to optimize the armies and try to abuse certain units and to do a stress test to certain units?
Okay, so there are different levels of testing that you need to do, and although I'd say I do keep a closer eye on stress testing and trying to make those abusive lists, because that's very important, because that's what usually you guys are going to do afterwards.
You're welcome.
But it needs to pass the beer and pretzel test in a way that, like you guys said before, that it's a game that's supposed to be easy to begin playing. So it needs to have that, also the beer and pretzel test, in a sense that nothing is supposed to be too complicated that it shuns away new players.
Yeah.
So there is a specific test cycle for that. Although I'd say we'd spend more time just being careful with the miniature junkies.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hope that answers. It was kind of a both, but yeah.
It helps, of course.
So I think that's it. Thank you for everyone to join us today, and yeah, I hope you as listeners enjoyed the podcast and find it informative. And yeah, thanks for staying with us until now, and you see us the next time.
Or
Right?
hear us the next time.
Quick shout out to the guys at Tabletop Warden. They're actually, it's like I think 4 or 5 in the morning for them. So hats off to you guys, man.
Yeah,
No,
thank you.
I think Brett is more
Yeah. Brett is the early guy.
yeah. Yeah, just yeah, middle of the
Well-
day, I guess. But
Well,
Hmm?
it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
Honestly, it really is. I've had a lot of fun. Thank you guys.
thanks for being with us. So
Of course.
yeah, thanks for being here, and we see us next time. So, bye.
Bye.
See you guys.
Bye bye.
Bye bye, guys.